Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guests today are George Clooney and John Prendergast, the co-founders of the Satellite Sentinel project. They are joining us from Washington, where George Clooney just testified before the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee about their common trip to the border area between the north and the south of Sudan, more specifically in the Nuba Mountains in the state of southern Kordofan. First of all, just let me ask you, how did you get in there? It's not exactly a friendly zone.
No, it's not a particularly friendly zone. It started by flying into the south and then going for, flying then further to the sort of the middle of the Sudan, right to the top of the South Sudan. And then we got in a truck and we snuck across the border, and we went about 6 hours north down a road that is there's been a lot of fighting on in the last couple of weeks.
Was it dangerous?
I mean, everything's dangerous one way or another, you know.
Okay, most importantly, what did you see there? Because as I say, not many journalists go there. There's not a lot of interest in that area. Can you shed light on what's happening as we speak?
Well, it's an active war zone. So, you know, at this point, you have active military confrontations very close to the area. You have the use of starvation as a war weapon, so many people aren't. Nobody's getting food in there. You have the airplanes bombing civilian populations, driving them into the caves nearby. You have all these different tactics of war playing themselves out on a daily basis for the people that live there.
And specifically what we saw were dead bodies along the side of the road, and we saw rockets fired over the top of our heads, and we saw bombs stuck in the middle of the ground that had fallen that hadn't exploded. And we saw a lot of people suffering. That's what we saw.
But is it a civil war, or is it the government of Sudan waging war on civilian population over there?
Both, I suppose. Yeah. It's both. If we take the civil war out for a second and we leave that part of it, the discussion out, you have the exact same actors who are all charged with war crimes at The Hague for what they did in Darfur, are now indiscriminately bombing innocent civilians, which by the Geneva Convention are called war crimes. That, forgetting the civil war part of this, is what's going on as well. They're trying to get these people to leave.
Did you see evidence of war crimes on your journey there?
Absolutely.
What more specifically?
Indisputable. Well, indisputable. We were there as they were firing rockets into the villages. We have film, I think we probably gave it to you, of rockets going right over our head. The day before we got there, one of the villages we were in was bombed by Antonov planes coming in, dropping 15 bombs. We showed children who an hour before had both of his hands blown off. And those were not military positions. There were no military there. This is a program designed to get these people to leave ethnically, period.
So are you saying that it's a new Darfur unfolding behind closed doors, if I may use the expression?
Well, it's all, it's the same kind of tactics, the same reasons for the conflict, all the same factors that existed in Darfur are unfolding today in the Nuba Mountains and in Blue Nile. It's just a different region with the same kinds of problems, the same issues with the central government, and just the same targeting on the basis of people's identity that we saw in Darfur.
So you're holding the government of Sudan and the president, I assume Omar al-Bashir, as responsible, accountable for what you say is happening on the ground, that is war crimes.
Yes, but it's not what we say. I'm the son of a newsman. It's not. This isn't opinion. We have actual footage of it. We have film of it. Not even from interviews, but from being there and seeing that live on camera. So it's not what we say. We're not making up the story. We're actually reporting what we saw and showing it to you.
One of the big issues is the lack of humanitarian access to that area. The U.S. government has insisted on this. Do you think that there's hope that this could happen soon?
Well, the time is running out before the rainy season begins. It's the government in Khartoum is using starvation as a weapon of war. They won't allow humanitarian access. There's a lot of work being done right now. The Arab League, the African Union, the United Nations together have put a proposal in front of the Sudan government. The rebels have agreed to it for total access to that area. The government has not yet responded and is supposed to respond in the next few days. So the world has to put pressure on the government of Sudan in order to open up that access so that people can be fed.
You just mentioned rebels, because there are some rebel groups. Do they have any responsibility on the situation? That's what the government of Khartoum is saying, that, you know, there is blame, but it should be shared, and they're not the only responsible for what's happening.
Well, the rebels they're fighting a war against the government because of the very unequal access to power and wealth, the lack of rights for the non-Arab populations. A number of different factors are fueling this war. But this isn't a normal conventional war. The government of Sudan is using tactics that target civilian populations. Rather than fighting the war with the rebels, they fight it against the civilian supporters of those rebel groups. So I think our cause here is to point out the violations of international humanitarian law, the violations of the Geneva Conventions, and the war crimes that are being committed on a daily basis in the war zones in Sudan, whether it's Darfur or the Nuba Mountains or Blue Nile. And we think that the world has to do more to try to bring it to an end.
Okay, so George, you testified before Congress. I understand you're supposed to brief President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton later this week. What do you wait for them? I mean, what should be done by the U.S. and the international community to stop what you're describing?
What should be done is what the United States can do to convince the international community, particularly namely China. China is the one who has the investments in the Sudan. They have a $20 billion infrastructure, oil infrastructure, that they've built up to supply 6% of their imported oil. And what has happened over the last 6 weeks is the South, who has the oil, and the North, who gets the oil and through their pipelines and through the refinery, they weren't sharing the wealth of the Southern's actual oil, and they were actually buying bombs to use against the South. So the South turned off the oil. What that does is that means China doesn't get any return on their investment at all.
Okay.
So we actually have a moment in time where we have the ability, for once in our lives, to go to China and not say, well, you should do this by appealing to their better angels or asking them to do something for humanitarian purposes, but actually for their own economic good and for ours, quite honestly. So there's a moment right now where we can get something done.
Okay, George Clooney, John Prendergast, thank you very much for your testimony on the unfolding situation in Sudan, a place that's often forgotten but should not be, according to what you're telling us. Thank you very much for watching this edition of the France 24 interview. See you soon.